Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me. In my series, Freemasonry and Satanism. And again I think about naming it that, Freemasonry and Satanism. And then I think about what I know now. What would I have named it? Would I have named it something else? Maybe Zionism and Satanism. Maybe the occult and Satanism. Certainly, it's been an interesting adventure doing this research since 2005. So at the end of 2019 will be 15 years. Making videos since 2013, the latter part of the year. So I guess September 2019 will be 6 years making videos. Wanted to do research and educate myself for about 10 years before I decided to become a writer, which I just bypassed and made videos because I saw the need. I thought I could do all that research and learn something and write a book that would interest people. But what I found was a lot of the books have already been written, but somehow they've been buried, lost in obscurity. In a lot of cases I found out that's intentional. So I'm resurrecting these authors. I made 7 2-hour videos on this book. And I'm only up to page 42 out of 95 pages. So I will be returning to this book. One of the creators of Zionism, the plans that are unfolding today to bring us this global world order with apparently the Jewish people in charge, whether they know it or not. And apparently at a higher level there are some seriously sinister and malevolent forces right up there with Satanism, the devil, Lucifer, and other names like Moloch and Isis, Osiris, Ra, and other deities that have been documented and worshipped throughout history, sacrificing humans to these deities. Quite bizarre. Something involving the Kabbalah, the Talmud, the Zohar, witchcraft, sorcery, magic, and so much more. 7 2-hour videos. If you haven't seen them, go watch them. I go into this information line by line and show pictures and props. So that was series 252. 7 2-hour videos. More to come from this book. So another book I've been reading, oh my, Mullins, New History of the Jews. So this will be series 253. And back in 2013, maybe early 2014, I made a book review, on this one, Murder by Injection. The Rothschilds, Rockefeller, Illuminati, Zionist, Jewish people, the banksters, takeover of the medical system in America, including the educational system and government agencies, by the same people. The people, the Zionists, the people who control our world today. And there's a lot going on. No doubt about it. Anyways, then more recently, I got this book by Eustace Mullins, a well-respected author and journalist and businessman in the Washington, D.C. area. So this one here was an interesting book to read. They do control the money, no doubt about it. A little fun fact about this book is when I got it, I found this inside. It's not your average dollar bill. It says silver certificate on the top. And apparently the Kennedy administration, I guess they were trying to go back to some kind of gold or silver standard instead of just pretend money. See, it says silver certificate. This certifies that there is on deposit with the Treasury of the United States, so $1 worth of silver. So the money was backed by silver. You can look under George Washington. It's payable in U.S. silver to the bearer on demand. So you could take this dollar bill and go get some silver. Looks like whoever gave this book to the original owner wrote a nice little note. Hope you enjoy your trip through history. Enjoy a trip through history. So it was a gift. I made a video on it, this book, in March, a year ago, 2018. So I suppose it's only appropriate, March 2019. I acquire this book by Eustace Mullins. So that's 3 different books. And this will be a new series because the others are so far back. And this is full of so much interesting information. I've been reading it. Meanwhile, if you know what I do, is I watch videos lately. And I make some little clips. Israel got nukes from U.S. traders, killed Kennedy. So I watch these different videos and make 1 or 2 minute clips. Jeff Rent says if American people knew, they would march on D.C. Jeff Rent says there's no limit to what these people do. Jeff says U.S. police chiefs go to Israel for training. Phil Schneider talks about control and underground bases. Rothschild Zionists plunging the West USA into poverty. Text Mars to Rent's Israel destroying Middle East. Tim Rifat talks to Rent's about MI-14 controlling Britain. Text says to Rent's, we have World War now. World War III. What is happening is biblical in nature. Chris Green, Israel controls our money and the world's money. I know what they are doing. Chris Green, Sky Spring. So in the course of reading some from this book, I'll show those 1 or 2 3-minute clips where it seems appropriate to add some information and take a break from the book. So as usual, it'll be a 2-hour video. Mullins, New History of the Jews. And this book was written back in 1968. And apparently the International Institute of Jewish Studies published the book. Published by the International Institute of Jewish Studies. Western Front, Hollywood, California. 1968. And there's a little bit here about Eustace Mullins. Fascinating history. Writing all these books, plus many others. At the age of 45, Eustace Mullins had completed 30 years of continuous activity as a writer. He was an artist and a businessman, with 5 books currently in print in fine arts, religious, and economic subjects. He also carries on a full-time business career and is known as an artist, a serious painter who has restored distance to the art of landscape, and whose paintings have won many prizes. He has also won prizes for his exhibitions of photographs, both portraits and still lifes. In business, he has been active as an economist and in public relations. Eustace Mullins is a veteran of the United States Air Force. With 38 months in active service during World War II. A native Virginian, he was educated at Washington and Lee University, New York University, and Escuela de Bellas Artes, Mexico, in the Institute of Contemporary Arts in Washington, D.C. Well, like I like to say about a lot of these authors whose books I read and make book reviews about, these guys are smarter guys than me. So we might want to pay attention to what they have to say. You think? He served as a legislative researcher during the late Senator Joseph McCarthy's battle against communism, and has been a member of the staff of the Library of Congress. He has been a consultant on highway taxation for the American Petroleum Institute, an editor of the Institution magazine, and an editorial director of the Chicago Motor Club. For 15 years, he donated his services as editor and writer to the best-known conservative publications in the United States. For a number of years, he was active in attempts to free the poet Asa Pound from an illegal confinement at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington, D.C. So Asa Pound, why do you suppose they illegally put him in a hospital, some kind of mental institution or something? You guess they wanted to shut him up? He was the first writer to have a book burned in Germany after World War II. So in Germany, he had one of his books burned after World War II. What don't they want us to know? When a German edition of 10,000 copies of Mullins on the Federal Reserve, so apparently after World War II, somebody in Germany was trying to say who was behind the U.S. money supply. They burned the books. They don't want us to know. Was burned by Dr. Otto John, West Germany's intelligence director, a few days before he defected to communism East Germany. So the communists wanted to burn, and did burn in Germany, a German edition of this book. And remember, prior to World War I, through a conspiracy, not a conspiracy theory, fact, Woodrow Wilson was put into the presidency seat because President Taft would not go along with the Zionist, Jewish, and secret society, Illuminati, high-level Freemasons, Kabbalist, occultist, people's plans to get the Palestinian land, to create the state of Israel, to fulfill a prophecy about world domination. Whether it's a real prophecy or a contrived one, that's not the point. They have a plan, and it might behoove the rest of us to pay attention to these details. You think? So I was reading this. Oh my, that's all I got to say. Oh my. Look at the table of contents. Jews and civilization. The biological Jew. The origin of the Jew. Jews in ancient history. The passion of Jesus Christ. Jews and ritual murder. Number 49. Page 49. Jews in Europe, Jews in communism, Jews in America, the Jew in our future. So let me see if I get this straight here. Jews and ritual murder, the passion of Jesus Christ, Jews in communism, Jews in America, Jews in Europe, the Jew in our future, Jews and ritual murder. You think it might behoove somebody to read this book by this man with these credentials? Well, here we go. Chapter 1. Jews and Civilization. Throughout the history of civilization, one particular problem of mankind has remained constant. In all of the vast records of peace and wars and rumors of wars, one great empire after another had to come to grips with the same dilemma: the Jews. Focus! This camera, I'm going to have to try to go buy a different camera. Doesn't refocus quick enough. Despite the persistence of this problem, and despite the enormous amount of literature on this subject, not one writer, either pro or con, has ever faced the dilemma at its source, namely, who are the Jews? And why are they here? This question can be answered only if a man brings to bear upon his full intelligence. This question must also be approached on the highest spiritual level, with the deepest motives of Christian charity, and above all, with the greatest respect for man himself, what he is, what his roots are, and what he is becoming. And let me tell you, doing this research, when I started back in September 2013, making videos, and my research back in 2005 after 9/11, I did not know where this line of research would take me. My pursuit was an answer to a simple question. WTH. What the heck is going on? Because I can see something was going on. We all can see something's going on. So I did not design the outcome. I followed my nose. I followed the leads like any detective would do, any scientist would do, any historian would do. The history of man is the history of conflict, of wars between the haves and the have-nots, of exploitation of man by man, and of terrible massacres. In this blood-stained record, however, the scholar finds only one people who have aroused the most violent antagonisms, no matter where they have settled. Only one people have irritated to its host nations in every part of the civilized world, to the point that the host has turned against them and killed them and driven them out. These people is called the Jews. So that's one heck of an opening of some highlighted material that I read. So I think I'll take a moment here and show a couple videos, now that the book has said that they have been a threat to host nations, nations that took them in throughout history. So these videos I made short clips from. I guess I'll start out with the first one. Apparently, Israel got nukes from the United States using traitors to this country. And apparently President John Kennedy wanted to expose him, and he was killed. So take a look at this short clip, and then I'm going to read some more from the book, and then when I want to take a break, I'll show another clip. But I think the two things clearly go together, my clips and the book and the information. What they did then, they are doing now. We can believe it, we can see it.
Hear any more about the case. So this is what happens when we get these Jews, these crooked, corrupt Jews. Anytime we get just a little bit of information about them. Of course, we now know the big news came out this week, and I don't think it's by accident, Jeff. The big news came out that the United States had helped Israel to develop the hydrogen bomb.
They're hydrogen bombs, thermonuclear weapons. We helped them from the beginning. Jack Kennedy wanted to stop it. He knew what was coming, and they killed him. And after that, it was they opened the doors. They slipped the Israelis not only the technology to do it, but they actually gave them plutonium, uranium. It was all missing from our nuclear power plants, our weapons production facilities. They got whatever they needed at Dimona, and they built their bombs. And they may have 400, 500, 600 of them now. They have the Samson option, where they brag that they can nuke any city in Europe. And they do have intercontinental ballistic missiles because they have launched satellites into orbit. That qualifies as an ICBM. So quite literally, they can take their nuclear weapons and spread them all around the world by ship, by plane, by anything. So watch for a nuclear false flag in this country. I say a middle grade city may well be taken out, or portions of it taken out, and the word will come out immediately in the controlled mainstream media. The Iranians did it. You watch, or whoever else they want to blame. That's the.
So during the video, I guess when I say those people, we know who we're talking about. But I will say something in defense of a lot of Jewish people. I don't believe a lot of people that are just because they're Jewish or descendants of Jewish families, I don't believe they're aware of what's going on, and I think in many cases they're being used and manipulated also. In other words, they have to cause agitation to encourage a lot of Jews to leave France, to leave the United States. And the Jewish Zionist leaders in Israel have been saying that because of the security and safety issues in France, for example. The leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, and other people are saying that they can come live in Israel where it will be safer. So they need to create the unsafe situations, conditions, to motivate the Jewish people to immigrate to Israel. And I believe that's been going on intensively for over 100 years. A lot of these things that have happened. Deals have been made, and it's been in a lot of my videos. So anyways, if they do control the banking systems of the countries all over the world, and they are trying to economically destroy the countries all over the world, and environmentally we are under attack, they're destroying our environment, our social systems, our societies, our families, and with geoengineering and a lot of technologies, our environment, our weather. So here's another short clip that Jeff Rent says, if the American people knew what was going on, they would march on DC and destroy these people. Listen to the clip yourself.
Know the story of Larry Sinclair, folks, and that was a true story. This is all beyond belief, all of it. If the American people actually knew what was being done to them, if there was any fight left in them at all, they would march on this nation's capital and take it apart brick by brick in order to get hold of the creeps and the criminals that are running it.
Absolutely. We've got to do that. Instead, we're having Jeb Bush being foisted on us, or Hillary Clinton. And the press is talking about how wonderful Jeb Bush is. Why, he has love for the immigrants. We need to let them all come here out of love.
Well, did you see what he said about the immigrants? He said we must do all we can to bring as many as possible in here because we need workers. Give them opportunity. We need workers for our jobs. The guy, look, the Bush family power is far eclipses the Clinton family power. I think you're right. I don't see Hillary Clinton making it, and my God, if she's the best female look, this isn't an issue of gender, it's a gender equality of human being. She doesn't have it, and neither does he. So look at the choice we have.
She has murderous instincts, we know that from what happened to Gaddafi.
Well, how she laughed hysterically and maniacally about his death? What?
All right, Eustace Mullins goes on this book for a couple paragraphs, how there have been differences between groups throughout history that had to have wars and fight each other, but eventually things settled down and they existed together. And a lot of people know, even in the United States, the American Indians, the different tribes were fighting each other. And this was going on all over the continent, in South America, Africa, the different tribes. So continuing on with this book, it says here, in only one instance can we find no evidence of reconciliation or of the victims immigrating permanently to other countries. The history of the Jews demonstrates two things. First, that there has never been a reconciliation between them and their host, the countries that took them in. And there are videos on YouTube and other sources, websites, and books you can purchase that show the 70, 80, 90, 150 different countries or states that they migrated to and were eventually run out of town with pitchforks or burned at the stake or prosecuted, persecuted, made to wear name tags, prohibited from having businesses or owning land, for apparently, according to this book, for the past 5,000 years. Oh my, back there with Egypt, back there in Babylonia. In this book, I've been reading it. The history of the Jews demonstrates two things. First, that there has never been a reconciliation between them and their host. Second, that no nation has ever succeeded in barring them permanently. Even more surprising is the fact that in every case where the Jews were expelled from a nation, often under conditions of great suffering, within a few years the Jews have returned. And again, one can find no parallel in historical records of other groups, this strange compulsion, this incredible persistence in putting their heads into the lion's mouth again and again. It has been suggested that the explanation lies in the odd and perverse characteristics of the Jews, their willingness to endure suffering, but the idea of group masochism fails to explain many other facets of the Jewish problem. In truth, like the answers to many of man's problems, the solution to the Jewish problem has been before us for more than 2,000 years. It is we who have been unable to see it because we have refused to face the problem honestly. The Jewish problem is an essential aspect of Christianity, and we can solve it merely by accepting the solution which Christ offered us, and in doing so gave up his human life some 2,000 years ago. The story of Christ is a story of mankind and the thrilling experience of finding redemption, the salvation of the soul. And I've said that before, that we are spiritual beings, and apparently we're on this planet for a reason. Whether it's a flat earth or a spherical earth, it doesn't matter to me. The sun rises, the sun sets. But it does seem that there is some kind of purpose for we the people being here. And of course the Lord's Prayer says, this is me talking on these issues, in the last part of the Lord's Prayer, lead me not into temptation and deliver me from evil. So maybe our education, our purpose for being on earth, is to be aware of temptation and evil. And apparently a lot of people are not paying attention if you see what's going on in the world these days. So back to the book. So finding redemption and salvation of the soul. The Jews represent all the temptations of animal existence, which it is intended that we shall transcend during our stay on earth. So like I said before, Eustace Mullins is a smarter guy than me. He even was a director for the Library of Congress and a researcher for the legislative, the government. So he says, like I guess I'm surmising my theory, that we're on this earth to transcend our stay on earth. So we are, as spiritual beings in these biological bodies, we're supposed to wake up. And lead me not into temptation and deliver me from evil. We're supposed to know better than to be sacrificing humans or having sex with animals or pansexualism, transgenderisms, and pornography and all this other stuff, stealing from people. To me, issues that are common sense, yet again, since I've been on this planet, I can think of some things that I would have done differently. I joined the military when I was 17 and did a lot of traveling. But you know, I can have the excuse, I didn't know. I didn't know. But that's okay. Redemption and salvation is waking up and saying, okay, this is what's the truth. What should I do? Should I ignore the situation? Should I ignore it when these certain peoples are killing other peoples? And it looks like they're going to start killing us? Should I ignore that? When does a person, male or female, stand up and say no? Maybe that's part of the salvation, part of the purpose for we being here. Just theorizing again, reading these materials. So back to the book. Because of the Jews, salvation becomes a conscious choice. So the Jews who are behind pornography and so much more, making people wealthy by giving them money and bribing them, and they control nations and destroy the peoples. So they create these situations that we can all consciously see what's going on. And maybe that's like a flag, you know. God is waving a flag at us. Hey, wake up. They're dumping stuff in the sky. They're microchipping children. They're planning on microchipping you. They're killing people all over the planet. They're planning on killing you. What does it take to wake people up from apathy? Just me asking myself these questions when I'm reading this material. So because of the Jews, salvation becomes a conscious choice instead of an involuntary or accidental decision. Without the Jew, according to Eustace Mullins, and the evils which he embodies, man might not have the choice placed before him in black and white. So is God trying to send us a message in black and white? Or is that why evil is here? He would have the excuse that he did not understand the choice he was asked to make. With the presence of the Jew, no such excuse can be made. So you think about all these politicians and banksters and other leaders in the military and the intelligence agencies, even assassinating people like President John Kennedy and so many other citizens all over the planet who get in their way or maybe know too much. They make choices. What do you suppose is going to happen to them? In the civilized world, at some point in his life, every man is faced with the supreme temptation. He is taken to the top of the mountain by Satan. The pleasures and delights of physical existence are spread out before him. And Satan says, all this and more will be yours if you will obey me. And we've all seen the movies where people sign in blood and make a deal with the devil. And of course, it always winds up bad in the end. They may get that wealth temporarily, or that person, female, male, or position, the king or whatever else, temporarily. Even like some presidents, temporarily. I can think of one not too long ago, Roosevelt, the last one, who had some kind of illness, a disease, crippled him to a wheelchair. And he went along with what they were doing, according to my research. Oops, I was interrupted there for a moment. So anyways, President Roosevelt apparently was promised to be the president or the leader of the world with the creation of the United Nations. He had issues with health and was in a wheelchair. So he went along because of temptation, like they all do. And of course, many of them, which we will see here in a moment, they go along because the powers that be have something on them. But back to the book here. We'll go over some more clips. But apparently they have blackmailed people. They have things on them, or they wouldn't be in positions of high power. Besides, the wealthy families need a continuous stream of money, and a lot of them are a little mentally ill with sexual perversions and other kinds of psychopathic and schizophrenic problems that we've all seen. We got some crazies running our world right now. So who knows where they're going to take us. But I believe, one, I believe in God. I believe Jesus was sent by the spiritual world God to teach people to love one another. And I believe we're here to wake up to what's going on. So let me continue here with the book. As you can see, I underlined stuff here. And these things I talk about are mentioned in this book. Okay, so Satan wants to take people up to the mountain and say, if you'll obey me, you can have whatever you want. We've seen it in the movies. Make a deal with Lucifer. Make a deal with the devil. Is it true? A majority of those who command wealth and power in the civilized world of today are those who have accepted Satan's offer, who have renounced the possibility of salvation of their souls through Jesus Christ. And you saw from the information I read about Eustace Mullins, he was anything but a fool. Served 3 years in wartime during World War II. These men are working for the Jew Winston Churchill. So they put these Jewish people, whether they're crypto Jews, say they're Christians. A lot of my investigations have revealed they're really Jewish, belonging to these families, taking on Christian names to get in positions of high power. But anyways, in this book it says, these men are working for the Jew Winston Churchill as the helpless tool of Bernard Baruch. He was controlling Woodrow Wilson. And I guess later on Franklin D. Roosevelt as the misshapen vessel of Bela Marskowitz. Stalin as the demonic instrument of Covenant. All these were men who had been taken up to the top of the mountain and shown the fabulous splendors and riches of earthly success and asked to obey Satan. So all these murderous leaders, and I can think of some current ones who have been behind some of the wars, destroying everything in the Middle East, and apparently involving current leaders, have made a deal for that wealth and that power, and apparently they're selling out we the people. I would just like to say this on video. We the people need to stop selling ourselves out. We may not be able to fight these people, but we can think right. We can acknowledge what we see. We can acknowledge what we hear. Whether it's the installation of 5G microwave transmission systems, and of course you wouldn't stick your head in a microwave, then why would they turn the whole city into a gigantic microwave? And the chemicals they're dumping in the sky, of course it can't be good for us. Messing with Mother Nature can't be good for us. And it's killing the birds and the bees and apparently the deer and everything else according to recent videos. Economic and environmental destruction. And of course, destroying society, social conditioning, trying to get people with all these temptations to go to the dark side, do all these dark things. Anyways, these men agreed, and because of their agreement, millions of people died violently. Great wars spread across the world like a virulent plague, and a Jewish bomb was exploded which threatened the life of every human being on earth. Churchill and Roosevelt and Stalin are dead, but their heritage of Jewish terror is with us today. All power to the Jews. This was the satanic pact which Roosevelt and Churchill signed, and because of it, each of these men died cursing the Jews, facing eternal damnation. All was ashes in their mouths, and they faced eternity with the terrible realization that for a few young girls and some bottles of whiskey, they had sold their peoples into slavery to the Jews. And if you're watching Deborah Chaveras videos and many other people's videos, Jeff Rentz, Tim Rifat, so many to mention, I watch every day, you know that they control everything. And they're planning on crashing the economic system here in the USA, it seems. And the insane weather. This is March 6, 2019. Evacuating people from the center of the United States and California. Lightning looking like a fallen power line on the ground. It's my best effects I can make. But the pictures of the lightning, the weather control, the geoengineering, the fires and everything else, the droughts, the flooding. Unbelievable. So let's just take a look at another video. And I have these different ones to choose from. Jeff Rentz says there's no limit to what these people do. Check this out.
Fed Reserve?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Nobody batted an eye. Nobody batted a damned eye about this. They just do what they want because they own this country. They own the criminal Congress. They own the criminal branch of the executive government. They own the courts. They do what they damn well please through AIPAC and all the rest of the subsidiary organizations that answer to it. AIPAC is a foreign agency in this country, the most powerful lobby group in America, and it's allowed to do it at once.
It really is. And, you know, as we talked about last month, Jeff, it turns out that one of the prime founders was Abraham Feinberg, who bribed President Truman. He was one of the founders of AIPAC. He bribed President Truman to get recognition of Israel as a state in 1948.
Correct.
Amazing.
Yeah,
and of course, AIPAC should be kicked out of this country.
Oh, if they should be kicked out, they should be. A lot of them should be put on trial for bribery, for extortion, for threats. There's no limit to what these people do.
So what I'm trying to do by adding these clips, and like I do adding pictures, I'm trying to show what has happened, what Eustace Mullins wrote about, 1968. A long educated career, experience, military, government, business. It's happening now. It's never stopped. They are moving closer to whatever the end game is. People get born, people grow old, people die, people make decisions, people had challenges, people had temptations, they made their actions. Did they find salvation? Where did they wind up when they left Earth, their spiritual essence, their soul? Did they ascend or did they descend, and does it matter? And a lot of people are social conditioned today that say, Rick, you're crazy. We don't have spiritual souls. They are meaning to tempt people. They're meaning to deceive people. If I could get any message across to people, this is all intentional. It is happening. And the only way out is to wake up. To those who know the history of mankind, there is nothing new or shocking in this. For 5,000 years, political leaders have been listening to the blandishments of the Jews, and they have each and every one wrecked their nations to some reef, on this same reef. So 5,000 years. So what other nations did they destroy besides what is visible in our lifetime, like Russia and China and Germany and all of Middle Europe and the Middle East since 9/11, dragging America into the war, killing our young men and women. In Britain and Central America, South America, killing people, Africa, putting the AIDS virus there, Korean War, Vietnam War, so much more insanity going on. Even recently, Australia banning David Icke from going there and doing his lectures that he's been doing for 15 years. I guess he's been there on 10 different tours. So not only are things continuing to move forward, but the intensity is increasing. which means they need to pull the trigger and shut people up en masse. And that's what they do during these revolutions. They do something called a purge. A lot of people disappear and get slaughtered, imprisoned, and tortured. These people aren't just satisfied with killing people. They want torture. There's something vicious and mean with these people. And of course, not all people who are born Jewish, and it's not all just Jewish people. A lot of people out there with psychopathic problems and schizophrenic problems for many different reasons. In the publications of the Jews themselves, we discover such little-known facts as the startling revelation that Julius Caesar, the master of the civilized world, was murdered by his own senators because he had sold out the Roman people to the Jews. I didn't know that. Did you know that? This is why I collect these books that are hard to get and read from them and have these conversations. So we can know these things and how long this has been going on and what the intentions are right now. The activities that's going on right now. For weeks afterwards, Jews gathered to weep at the spot where he had been slain, just as they gathered to weep for Roosevelt, Churchill, and for John F. Kennedy. Throughout history, this sordid tale is repeated again and again. Throughout history. For the leaders and for the led, the message of Jesus Christ remains the same. Turn away from Satan and follow me. And of course, these days, if you're paying attention to a lot of videos on YouTube, they're really working hard to convince people that Jesus wasn't real. Interestingly enough, countries, nations all over the world throughout history, even 2,000 years ago, 1,800 years ago, 1,900 years ago, 1,700 years ago, 16, 15, 14, 1,300 years ago, 1,000 years ago, there's stories about the happenings during Jesus Christ's life. It's well documented. They can try to take it away, but only the short-sighted and narrow-minded can reject it just because some video says it. There's a reason for everything. So anyways, back then a lot of famous philosophers and leaders and governments were all involved in the historical thing about Jesus Christ. That's why they created the Christian religion in 400 AD after Jesus Christ. Why would they have created that religion if he didn't exist? The books were there, the writings were there, they're in the New Testament. Anyways, it just gets me a little perturbed when I see so many people watching the videos and believing that we're nothing but evolved humans from monkeys and we die. That's the end of the story, even though there's all kinds of evidence of out-of-body experiences and remote viewing and after-death experiences, even by children who come back to life and talk about seeing grandpa or grandma, somebody they'd never met, telling them it's not your time, you need to go back. Too much information out there to be blind. Anyways, back to the book. Despite the simplicity of this message, these magical 7 words which offer mankind everything. Millions of people have been unable to understand it and have died without salvation. And I have to confess, I didn't believe strongly. I believed blindly, which was okay. I guess it's just a matter of believing. But when I grew up, I went to private Catholic school for a little while and got my catechism and went to church after that. Even when I stayed with my grandmother, I went to the Baptist church. So it didn't bother me whether I went to the Catholic church or the Baptist church or whatever. But I blindly believed in God and Jesus. And again, that's okay. But since I've been doing this research, it's not so blind. And I did have an out-of-body experience myself. So it's not, to me, and that was on Christmas Day Eve that happened to me. So I always figured that God gave me a present for Christmas. I don't have to have blind faith. I know there's a spiritual essence in me that I can project and see things when I'm not in my body. I've seen my body laying there. And there's plenty of books on these topics. Lots of books about psychic research and so much more. So apparently the stories about fallen angels and all the evil stuff in the Kabbalah and the Talmud and the Zohar and witchcraft and sorcery, apparently it's all real. And people probably need to look into it. And if they do look into it, they'll see that it's real. But of course, I had one commenter tell me, "Oh, Satan is the good guy. Go to the website, joyofsatan.com. I will tell you one horrible thing I did in my research. I looked up witchcraft holidays because I wonder how they coincided with the holidays we all adhere to. The ones where they close the banks and you don't get the mail. And ironically, they kind of align with each other, many of them. But when you look up witchcraft holidays, you might come across some websites where there will be pictures of things you will regret seeing, and other instances of sacrificing and stuff like that. It's amazing what you can find on the internet. So back to the book. So some people die without salvation. They die without waking up, without realizing that Jesus Christ was real. And part of what we are to do is to mentally make a decision to not follow Satan. And if you want to encompass that with the New Age, so be it. Although a lot of people into the New Age may be thinking they're doing the right thing, some of those videos I continue to see again and again and again are trying to say that do not believe in Jesus. It's outdated. It was made up. It was meant to control you, meant to control me. And they're destroying the children's mind, and they're taking away the chance of salvation. Your children's, your friends, your family, you, where your soul goes when you die. They don't want you to go to the heavenly sphere, wherever that is, whatever that is. I've got plenty of books on those topics, and maybe I'll try to make some more videos on those topics. I've made a lot of videos on psychic research and the Kabbalah and the Kahunas in Hawaii and Carlos Castienda involved in peyote and the Mexican shamans. So I think I know a little bit, but I have a lot to go. So a lot of people are going to die without salvation. Why is this? First of all, the Jews have survived because they are masters of confusing the issues. After the crucifixion of Christ, when his message of salvation began to attract thousands of followers, so all this was documented back then, the Jews made a typical move. Rather than oppose him, they tried to take him over. They proclaimed to the world that Christ was a Jew. You know, I didn't debate that in my mind, that he was a Middle Eastern citizen, which of course has black people, brown people, and some lighter people. I didn't think they had too many white people, Nordics, but he's got some information here, true or not. To me, it's not so important. We're spiritual beings. But I'll read what Eustace Mullins says here. So the Jews wanted to take over this Jesus Christ preaching and teaching after he was crucified. They proclaimed to the world that Christ was a Jew. Therefore, one could become a Christian merely by doing whatever the Jews ordered you to do. In doing this, the Jews ignored Isaiah 5:20. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. And that certainly is going on in our world today. Woe unto them. So if God says woe unto them, I think it would be one of those things we wouldn't want to do. That's why I do these book reviews, and to do this, I read these exact words for a couple pages. So it isn't my story. I can throw in my 2 cents, and I don't expect people to take my word for things or believe the way I believe. I think everybody has to start asking questions. And of course, there is the biblical reference to ask and ye shall receive, and seek and ye shall find. So it is a mental choice. Incredibly enough, according to this book, millions of people were tricked by this strategy of the Jews. despite all records which proved that Jesus Christ, in his physical form, was a blue-eyed, flaxen-haired Gentile from Galilee. So maybe they had, well, they did have Gentiles back then. Thousands of Christian ministers tell their congregations, "Let us worship Christ the Jew." Not only is this the ultimate blasphemy against our Savior, but it also violates every canon of common sense. If Christ were such a good Jew, why did the Jews demand that he be crucified? Why did the elders of Zion, we've been talking about Zionism, meet in secret in the synagogue of Satan and plan to bring about his physical death? Amazingly enough, there is not a single so-called Christian minister in the United States who is willing to stand before his congregation and raise this question. Instead, some Christian ministers today are leading the program to Judaize the people. Now, if you want to talk about Judaism, just me speaking here, it's common knowledge that the Jews were largely behind the promotions of pornography all over the world. And a lot of people are going in that direction. And even in the Bible, Revelation 2.9, 3.9, it says Jews who call themselves Jews but are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. So apparently the pornographic and all this other craziness is part of the satanic fallen angel religions. And they're trying to drag everybody else into it. And they are planning a bad day. Look at all the murders all over the world when they took over Russia after World War I. Espionage. And then through blackmail and espionage, they acquired nuclear weapons from the USA. And now they have something called the Samson option. If we people in the world try to stop them, they have intercontinental missiles, and they can take out cities all over the world. And they've threatened to do that with the Samson option. I made a video on that book, the Samson option. Go look it up. Go get the book. Put it in your computer. Don't believe me. Some religious leaders meet in solemn conclave to absolve the Jews of all complicity of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. The Jews are advancing millions of dollars to accomplish this end. I would say they're spending billions, and they probably spent $1 trillion. Social conditioning we the people. And they own all the media, the movies, the TV programming. And so, you know, you want to tell people it's not the people's fault for believing what they see and what they hear since they took over the educational systems. But using common sense and logic should tell people that something's wrong. Killing people is wrong. Destroying nations. In the United States, they control our money supply, and they're siphoning off trillions and trillions, probably every year. Building underground facilities, destroying our environment, and buying up resources all over the world, destroying other nations, and all these wars that cost a lot of money. Nobody can deny these things are not happening. And we're paying for it. It goes on to the USA national debt. What we owe. And they plan on collecting. So the Jews are advancing millions of dollars to accomplish this end. The effect of this convocation of religious leaders would proclaim to the world that the Holy Book, God's own record, is a lie. So they want you to believe the Bible is a lie. And there's plenty of people seemingly so sincere on those videos on YouTube and other places and websites and books and New Age material. And a lot of people are falling for it. When it, again, using common sense and logic, something's wrong. Look at the pictures. With that in mind, why don't I take a break for a minute and play another clip. So I got this list here. Let's see. The Jeff Rent says the police chiefs go to Israel for training. So apparently they're sending sheriffs, leaders, the sheriff and police chiefs and other people involved in policing we the people to Israel for training. And when I show you these clips, please write down the videos and go watch them in their entirety. So you can find out what's really going on. I just clip out 1 or 2 minutes. But see this short clip.
Tim, not to discount the acknowledged fact that for many years now, our police chiefs and sheriffs have been flown, all expenses paid, to Israel to be trained by the Israeli Defense Forces and police forces on how to handle American sheep.
Exactly. And that, of course, is all funded and run by the Rothschilds, who, of course, need these well-paid, middle-class shock troops to keep the population down, because things are going to get worse and worse and worse in the West. They're going to get so bad that the only way out of the demonstrations, anarchy, the Chad world, which will be spreading, it's there already, will be a big war. So the war between China and the West is penned in by the Rothschilds for the future, because China has to be destroyed if the Rothschilds are to survive. And they don't mind releasing loads of radiation if push comes to shove, because China must go. China's the enemy. China's whole system sends shudders of fear up the Rothschilds. Imagine a government that actually goes after bankers, and until recently executed them, takes all their money for being kleptocrats.
Let me know if you like this idea of reading from these books that I go over, and I pre-read the material. Books that are hard to get that I find, and throwing a little bit of information from other people in these short clips. Just, again, to try to show them what we're talking about in the past is going on right now. They've always said we were going to have World War III. Even Albert Pike, who wrote Morals and Dogma, the Kabbalah for the Freemasons, sorcery, witchcraft for the Freemasons. He said there would be 3 world wars. Should we believe him? Everything else they've done. Everything else we've seen that they've done. 9/11. So many other presidents and world leaders and other citizens assassinated, ruined, and causing the U.S. economy to collapse 8 times since they took over the money supply in 1913. So they allow people to accumulate a little wealth, and then they just crash the system. Then people can't pay their bills anymore. They were overconfident. They were taking out loans. They expanded. They were tempted. And then they fell. Regrettably, we've all been sucked into that trap. What is the meaning of this? They want to destroy and make people believe the Bible is not real. The meaning is plain, according to this book. Priests, too, are human beings. They, too, can be led to the top of the mountain by Satan. In the final analysis, no intermediary can face the reckoning of the individual who must meet God face to face. The real function of the priest is to emphasize for us the message of Christ, the offer of redemption of our souls. And I know back during Martin Luther's time, 1800s, not sure exactly when he was doing what he was doing, creating the Protestant religion. But anyways, the Catholic Church was trying to convince people the way to be saved was to do whatever the church asked you to do, or donate money. You could buy your salvation. But Martin Luther came along and said, no, no, no. The Bible says, believe in me and ye shall be saved. That's what Jesus said. So if we're spiritual beings and we're here under these conditions, we're supposed to wake up and see what we see and hear what we hear and acknowledge that Jesus was real and realize all this is going on. Probably we can't do anything about it, but we can save ourselves. We can save our family. We can save our friends. We can tell them. This is about understanding who and what you are and making mental decisions not to join the dark side, not to follow in the lead of the temptation. And to get out of evil, all you have to do is ask for it. The Lord's Prayer, lead me not into temptation and deliver me from evil, which means we can get caught up in evil. I was thinking about that yesterday. probably when I was going to sleep dreaming, is that me sitting here, in essence, is two entities. This biological computer, Rick Miracle. And the other entity, of course, is my spiritual essence that doctors and professionals have seen evidence that this essence leaves your body when you die. So that's two. But it did dawn on me, there's three. Not just two. Not my physical body, the computer that does die, but the spiritual essence, which is aware of what I'm saying right now at a higher frequency, operating speed, so to speak, using computer lingo. But you can be possessed by the spiritual, satanic, demonic, fallen angels and entities. I've gone over that in many books. Carlos Castaneda's Separate Reality, the Kahonas, the Shamas in Hawaii, and tribes all over the world, and the Italy and Ireland and Brazil having more possession cases these days, people being possessed, having to call exorcist. So not only is there Rick, physical, biological, computer body, but the spiritual essence in me, but a third entity can occupy me, and that can be possession, an evil spirit. But people have to get into that to get it. But also, on the Christian side, there's the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So if you believe in Jesus and you talk to God and ask to be protected and saved, you can have the third spiritual essence in you, which would be the Holy Spirit. So some of us on the planet have the Holy Spirit, some of us have the evil spirits. And maybe some people are indifferent and don't have anything except their own spirit and their physical body. And that seems to be a dangerous place to be. Just rationalizing, theorizing, and thinking. So Christ says, believe in me, according to what I know about the Bible and reading this book, and believing in Jesus that he was real and turning away from the dark side, saying no. And we are all sinners. We're not going to be perfect. Don't anybody think they can be perfect. We're still going to make mistakes. We're going to do things and later on go, man, I wish I didn't do that. I wish I didn't say that. You get in a pinch and you might do something that might have even been illegal or something. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Maybe somebody gave somebody a huge bag full of marijuana and they sold some to their friends. Whatever. Or they needed money desperately and they stole something. Whatever. Or they even turned against one of their friends or family because of their envy or greed or selfishness or bribery. We all make mistakes. But that can be rectified. You can talk. You can believe. You can see. You can hear. You can speak. That's probably why we're in the situation we're in right now, because people aren't paying attention and people aren't standing up. And I do realize it doesn't escape me. It's a dangerous situation for anybody to be saying these things, to be making these videos. And how many people are doing it? Quite a few. So I suppose when they do what they're going to do, they're going to have to go after all those people. People like Richie from Boston or David Icke. Not only will he be refused access to go to Australia, what can they do next when they do what they're going to do, when they crash the system? And they have all these installed monitoring system, beast computer, facial recognition, and microwave transmitters, weaponized even, can do something to people and just start making them shake and their blood vessels in their brain explode and their brains explode and their eyes. Microwaves are pretty dangerous. But remember, that's your physical body. It's your spiritual essence you're worried about. You get on that elevator after you die. Are you going to ascend or descend? That seems to be an important thing to think about. And the only way you can really lose is to deny that Jesus was real and deny that the Satan forces are busy. But I don't think any of us can be expected to go save the world. But if you see something is wrong, as they like to say, if you see something, say something. That cliche they have these days about terrorism, etc. Okay, records can be altered and destroyed. Men can be persuaded to follow false gods. But in only one place can the truth never be falsified, and that is in the soul. So again, it's what we all think. We willingly go to the dark side, or we say we want to go towards the heavenly side. And it's a choice, simple choice. Doesn't take any really big effort, but believing and speaking up. Consequently, those who listen to the inarticulate heart's tone, those who follow the precept of not lying to oneself and can make the correct choice, the choice that the presence of the Jew on earth has simplified for us. So maybe in a way they've done everybody a favor who gets saved. They're showing us what we shouldn't do. So maybe God in his infinite wisdom has a plan for all of this. Who knows what we were before we were born into these bodies. And hopefully we know where we're going when we leave. I certainly don't want to wind up in the dark places I've become to understand are real. You can see paintings and all that of the underworld and the molten lava and the evil pictures and demons with pitchforks and people drowning up to their necks. It's pretty horrific. We can live life as a Jewish lie and die without salvation, or we can embrace the truth of Jesus Christ and rise to the glory in his arms. So again, I didn't read anywhere where Eustace Mullins was a preacher here. And you see these other books that he read. I guess he figured it out. They controlled the money supply and all the horrible things they've done here. Money supplies of countries all over the world, bringing us world wars and all this other stuff. I suppose that would shake up a man's soul. And forcing fluoride in our water, taking over the medical establishment. We're all aware of the mercury and other pollutants in vaccines and toxins in foods and genetically modified foods. Who would do such evil things? Again and again and again and again. So the only answer I can think of is what Eustace Mullins is saying in this book. The religious component to what he's saying is kind of strong. But I always believed in Jesus Christ and God and that we had spirits. But he, out there, with all his experience and all the books he wrote, he put this stuff in writing. Smarter guy than me. Should we listen? The Bible. I've been making videos on the Old Testament and the New Testament. And I was amazed to make a video on the Old Testament in Jeremiah and find out that God apparently destroyed Jerusalem a couple times because the Jews were throwing their sons and daughters into the fire of sacrifice to these demon gods. Satan, serpent, fallen angels. So maybe these evil forces have some influence on planet Earth, and they would like us all to believe that it's UFOs and aliens. I've got some books on that topic. I got this book in the mail. The Mystery of the Menorah. I need to read it. And the Hebrew Alphabet. Mysteries Explored. The Search for the Human Origins. UFOs and Religious Beginners. So people are writing this thing trying to distract people, saying that Jesus wasn't real. Technocracy Rising, the Trojan horse of global transformation. Daniel reveals the bloodline of the Antichrist. There's your serpent. Awaken to the New World Order. I've got many more books. I get a couple of these sometimes in the mail every day. I keep looking for them. I keep watching videos. I keep trying to figure it out. Will I ever figure it out? Have I figured it out? Those are the questions. And I appreciate people leaving comments and thumbs up and sharing my videos with other people. Although it seems like I rarely get past 50 views, even though I get 10 or 25% of the thumbs up and a whole bunch of positive comments like this video is a gem and thank you very much and God bless you. But then again, I'm aware how computers work. They use algorithms. They can suppress my videos. And maybe it's a good thing. Because if I became too popular, I might not be walking among the people. I might be in that grand elevator going up, I hope. I believe. Just saying, it is a little concerning to do this research and realize what they're doing to people all over the world and what they're probably going to do when they bring about the big event to bring about the global world order. They always do a purge. They've done it in every revolution, every world war, every small war, every invasion of a country. Over and over and over and over and over. It is this knowledge of redemption which has inspired the great artists and musicians, philosophers of our civilization. In the soaring passages of the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, in the paintings of hundreds of Renaissance artists, in the writings of many Christian philosophers, the splendor of the Christian way of life has been made plain for us. But here too the Jew has not failed to meet the competition. He has flooded the art world with the meaningless daubs, and in some cases made by dogs and monkeys, as an ultimate expression of the Jewish contempt for the gullibility of the Goy, the Gentile. That's what they call us, Goy, which means cattle. He has turned the world of music into the cornucopious screechings of automobile horns and mindless poundings of drums. He has turned the world of writing into repetitious tales of human debauchery. Well, I suppose Eustace Mullins can write. We may well ask, how can the Jew do this? How can he commit such outrages of human sensibilities? The answer is that the Jewish life can only be one of hatred and revenge, because by his very nature he cannot accept Christ's offer for redemption of the soul. He is a snarling animal, forever condemned to the earthly sphere. Heaven is denied him. This is the real tragedy of the Jew. Young people today, their heads turned by this flood tide of Jewish filth, find it difficult to hear the message of Jesus Christ. And I just made some notes here on the bottom when I was reading this. The New Age, Antichrist, tattooed demons, gangs, zombies. So if you drive down by the railroad tracks, you'll see all those railroad cars with all of those graffiti on them, and the bridges and buildings, and they do seem to have invaded the consciousness of we the people. So let me play another script here. And like I said before earlier, I watch all kinds of videos. Here's one by Phil Schneider, and he talks about the underground bases and prison camps they're building. And this is years ago. Apparently he was murdered by these people. Another example. So apparently, like I said, they're sucking billions and trillions every year, preparing for this huge event with underground bases and cities. There's plenty of videos on YouTube. And prisons, we've all seen it. Jade Helm 15. Walmart's turned into FEMA facilities, so it seems, and so much more. But take a look at this clip.
I never went back for my paychecks. Don't intend to either. These people are beginning to show signs of being our utmost enemy. I'm talking about military people now engaged in training foreign troops on American soil, clearly against the Bill of Rights and the U.S. Constitution. It's why we formed a government, why our forefathers formed a government, a republic of these United States in the first place, way back 200 plus years ago. Because the drawing and quartering of soldiers, taxation without representation, law by edict, otherwise known as today's version, executive order, among other things. The very reasons that we became, in quote, free, a free republic, a free society, possibly one of the greatest nations to ever be a nation on this earth, were instilled in our founding fathers that are now so far away from the people now running our federal government structure. So I'm here today to touch upon a number of subjects. One being that these underground bases are roughly over 3 of them per state. There's now, instead of 12 prison camps, there's 39. That's almost 1 per state. They're building 2 prison camps every 7 months. They're building 2 underground military bases every year. Each one of these military bases, by the way, these underground military bases, they cost somewhere between $17 and $26 billion. They employ 1,800 to 10,000 workers each, and varying grades of skill.
All right, a little more current events. Tex Mars is talking to Jeff Rentz, and he says World War is going on right now. So I believe it has, ever since World War II, when they had the fake threats of a Cold War and Russia nuking the U.S. They've been sucking billions and trillions out of the USA Treasury. U.S. citizens, none of us are awake about it. Nobody's aware. And they've been preparing, for some big event with all these advanced technologies, weapon systems, microwave crowd control. But listen to what Tex says, this short clip.
Well, you're right.
Penetrate all the Muslim world.
Well, that is true. Netanyahu has spoken about the supposed Islamic terrorism in France. What has he said? He said, well, all of you Jews, all you have to do is, come to live in Israel. Come stay here. You'll be safe here.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
You'll be safe here. So he's telling all the Jews, and understand that, there's probably about 1.5 million in France. Come on over to Israel. Of course, he hasn't told that to the United States. He wants the Jews to stay here for now because,
6 million of them. It's always at 6 million.
They have half American wealth or more.
Yeah.
So he doesn't want to lose all that. So it's really, I want people to understand, what we have is a world war going on right now. And the world war is between 2 forces, the United States and Israel versus the rest of the world.
All right, back to the book. So what do you think? Is the war going on now? They've been dumping chemicals in the sky for, I guess, 20 years. Installing all these microwave systems and so much more, building underground cities and weaponized systems and prison camps, FEMA camps, controlling the weather, and bouncing the economy around 2008, stock market collapse, and giving these people who control our reality billions and trillions. And Israel is growing every day, and even President Donald Trump announces the United States recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and moves the embassy from Tel Aviv to Israel, and other leaders all over the world are following suit. You think we should wake up? Back to the book, page 10. But as the great poet Lord Byron said, adversity is the road to truth. For those young people who can hold their heads up in this time of universal degradation, who can still hear the message of Jesus Christ, the rewards are great. And for those whose hearts are not yet open to Jesus Christ, this book has been written. It is the factual history of the Jews. And if, after reading it, one can still deny Christ, then one is indeed lost. So that was chapter 1. So let's look at chapter 2, the biological Jew. We have already referred to the role of the Jew in civilization and the presence of the synagogue of Satan. And if you haven't paid attention, and if you don't know, go look it up. But even in the Emmys and the Grammys recently, there are satanic symbols. The Super Bowl halftime shows satanic symbols. For the past 10 years, it's been obvious. They even have the horns on Katy Perry and Madonna and tunnel openings and Eurovision like the American Idol. I've talked about these again and again and again. Goddess of Destruction Shiva projected on the Empire State Building. A big goat projected on the Hoover Dam. They're telling us. Maybe it's part of some of these, the rules, God's rules or the universe laws, is we the people have to be forewarned. Why they put all this in movies and cartoons. But even then, I guess people don't want to see it for what it is. They don't want to see what they see, and they don't want to hear what they hear, and they don't want to use their common sense and their rationalized brain and make the right decision. And again, none of us are perfect. But again, Jesus didn't say you had to be perfect. He who believes in me shall be saved. As simple as that. Once you believe in Jesus and you recognize the satanic situation, synagogue of Satan, you probably will be saying and doing and thinking different things, maybe even being occupied by the Holy Ghost spirit from the heavenly world. Maybe it's guardian angels, I don't know. Spirit guides, but to be better than the demons and fallen angels to have possessing people. Again, I don't profess to try to even make anybody believe I know everything. I'm reading these books and I'm thinking and I'm sharing. Who else is doing it? There are a lot of people trying to warn us. There's plenty of room for more people to get up there and say something. And, if what's said here, believing in dying and winding up in heaven is a great reward, that's where I want to be. Back to the book. But man, as a philosophical being, as a creature of God, if you will, occupies on earth a biological body. That's what I said. This biological body is the container, the vehicle for the spiritual soul, my essence. What is the biological relationship of the Gentile and the Jew? We stated without fear of contradiction that no writer has ever faced this Jewish problem at its source. Why is this? The answer is clear. No writer has ever been able to face the Jewish problem honestly because of the emotional and biological reaction either for or against the Jews. Logically, there must be an explanation of the conflict between Jews and Gentiles over thousands of years, and logically a writer should be able to write about it. So people can do this research, but probably a lot of people don't want to really deal with it or are afraid of it. And that just brings me to another question. What is it to be a Jewish person? Henry Ford, the automaker, had that in his books. It's not a DNA thing. It's not being from Iraq or Israel or Jerusalem or even the Middle East. The Khazarians, which are Nordics, up in the north near Germany and Russia and the Ukraine, a whole nation converted to Judaism. So apparently it's some kind of belief in a religion, in a cult, would have a deity. Yes? No? So even people who are Jewish, who decide that Jesus Christ is the Savior, become Christians. So a Jewish person can become a Christian. Now, what about Jewish people who choose to be atheists? I feel sorry for them, but there's probably nothing hateful about that. The same thing as Christians or children of Christian people who decide they don't like religion anymore and want to be an atheist. Maybe there's nothing horrible that they're doing, but I feel sorry for them. Where are they going to wind up when they leave the planet? Whether you're Jewish or not Jewish. Just seems like we are spiritual beings, and it's something we should ponder. And what we do does matter. What we think matters. Just me throwing in my 2 cents after all these books I've gone over and research I've done. But again, I'm learning here by reading Eustace Mullins' material. Some things I know, some things I'm learning, some things I might not even agree with. But I keep an open mind and try to figure it out, which is all anybody can do, and I think all that God would expect us to do. We get all the information laid out for us, and we have a choice. And as the New Agers and other people want people to believe, you have free choices. You don't have to believe in God anymore. You can do whatever you want. Pansexualism, debauchery is okay. If you want to do it, who's to stop you? Who should stop you? Why should they stop you? Those darn haters. 10 commandments. Isn't that hateful to have those commandments? And don't murder and don't steal. Don't bear false witness. Don't covet. Don't do adultery. You know, people want to go out there and have sex with an animal. What's wrong with that? That's what they want people to believe. In the Lord's Prayer, again, I'm reminded, lead me not into temptation and deliver me from evil. Why is that in the Lord's Prayer? Probably for a reason. Nevertheless, no Gentile writer has ever been able to deal with this problem. No Jewish writer has ever been able to logically write about the Jews, but this has not prevented them from writing hundreds of books on the subject. Interestingly enough, every book written by a Jew to explain anti-Semitism comes up with the same answer. The Gentiles don't like us because of our religion. And I suspect if they were in some kind of satanic religion, like Moloch, and like it says in Jeremiah in the Old Testament, he had Jerusalem destroyed and the Jewish people taken into captivity and slavery because they were sacrificing their sons and daughters in the fires of sacrifice, Moloch, Baal, Baalim. It says those exact words, and probably associating that with morals and dogma with the fallen angel Rephaim. So the information's there if people want to see it, I suppose. Back to the book. From the beginning of time, this is the only answer that the Jews have ever been able to offer to the problem of anti-Semitism. And that's why the Jews were banished from Spain in the 1500s. It wasn't compatible with Christianity. So all of Spain, they were exiled. They went to Holland and the Netherlands and to Poland and Russia. And then the problems began to arise there. Then they made their way back into Britain and back into France and back into Spain and into the United States. And every country that they've gone into and they've been there for a while, the country was destroyed. And that's in this material. That's not me saying that. Eustace Mullins. History of the Jews. 1968, I believe. Is it not strange that so clever and resourceful a people who have managed to survive for thousands of years in hostile environments can offer so illogical an answer? So it's always about incompatibility of religion. And to me, that would be like a duh. How many people would reject sacrificing humans and all the other evils they do, including pornography and everything else, and the movies and TV shows where they're slaughtering people? Some of those programs are just too gross and vicious to watch. Remember Scarface, the movie? I actually got up out of my seat at the theater and walked out. It was just too much. But people are indoctrinated into that these days. Concerning, you think? Look at since 9/11, all those people slaughtered in the Middle East, and then they're depopulating the Middle East, sending those peoples into Europe and America with the Islamic religion, which seems to not be compatible with the Christian religion. But the world was living in peace. Those people were allowed to be Islamic. There were Christian peoples living in the Middle East. Atheists even. Jewish people. But somebody intentionally wanted all this destruction that we've been witnessing. They have a plan. Back to the book. Let us suppose that we could assemble 1,000 Gentiles who did not like Jews and who would be willing to state publicly what they did not like, that they did not like Jews. So could you get 1,000 Gentiles who would publicly state they don't like Jews? We would ask each one of them, what do you know about the Jewish religion? And each one of them would have to answer, I do not know anything about the Jewish religion. Anyways, you've been watching my videos, you know that I've been looking into that, the Kabbalah and the Talmud and the Zohar. And I've been learning about it, and the New Age, Theosophic Society, the occults, the secret societies, and all those teachings. So I've been spending years looking into this religion of these people, not knowing where it would lead me. Only in the last year or so has it become a little clearer. Hopefully it'll get even more clear if I continue researching this. The only thing that Gentiles know about the Jewish practice of religion is that they meet in synagogues. In view of this lack of knowledge, how could any Gentile hate the Jews because of their religion? And I've said this before and I'll say it again. Anti-Semitism to me is ridiculous. First of all, Semites are all those people in the Middle East. And I've been screaming at the top of my lungs that they're killing all the Arabs, which are Semites. So obviously I'm not an anti-Arab hater. I am not a supporter of the synagogue of Satan and sacrificing the sons and daughters into the fires of Moloch. I'll generally admit to that. If you want to call me anti-anything, I'm anti the devil. I think, according to what I'm reading here in my research, it's not about we people being anti-Semitic or hating Jews. It's about Jews hating us, like Eustace Mullins is saying here. They hate us. I mean, it's a hatred, I guess, we need to come to grips with. Okay, so Eustace Mullins continues on in this book, page 11. If Gentiles could read the Jewish holy book, the Talmud, and find out something about the Jewish religion, they would really become anti-Semitic because this book is filled with vile names for Jesus Christ. So it's filled with vile names for Jesus Christ. And what was the crime of Jesus Christ? He came to preach that we are to love one another, care for one another, support one another, a peaceful planet. They hate that. It's not me. It's just doing your research, reading the Bible, anything. Descriptions of weird sexual rites and formulas for cursing the Gentiles. Witchcraft, magic, sorcery. Consequently, the Jews for centuries have had a rule that any Gentile who found out the contents of the Talmud or who possessed a copy of it must be instantly killed. I remember the earlier Freemasons, they had that teaching when you joined the Freemasons, you had to swear on a Bible that if you told the goings-on or the secrets, that you would be killed in very vicious ways. So you can see the connections and the similarities with the occult secret societies, the Zionist and the banking systems and the Kabbalist, witchcraft organizations. Hatred of humanity, oh my. The real reason for the anti-Semitism among the Gentiles is explained in the Bible in numerous references to the Jews. Thus, Ezekiel 36, verse 31 through 32, "Then shall you remember your own evil ways, and your doings that were not good, and shall loathe yourself in your own sight for your own iniquities and for your own abominations. Not for your sake do I do this, saith the Lord God. Be it known unto you, be ashamed and confounded for your own ways, O house of Israel." So God is saying to the, O house of Israel, be ashamed and confounded for your own ways. So apparently, repeatedly, again and again and again, God is trying to give these people who are into this Kabbalistic, Zionist, anti-humanity people a chance to redeem themselves, even sending Jesus Christ. I guess we could say that would be quite a merciful God, to give them chances again and again and again, and then they do what they've done to we people all over the world, treating us in such horrible, insane ways again and again and again. But remember, we're just biological entities. We go back to the spirit world. Anti-Semitism, then, throughout history, has been the reaction of the Gentiles to the deeds of the Jews in their midst. So it isn't anti-Semitism. It is the reaction of people. Whether you're in China, Brazil, America, Canada, Argentina. It's documented all over the world. Iraq, Afghanistan, Germany, Austria. It's been the people's reactions to the deeds of the Jews in their midst, according to Eustace Mullins. So is it anti-Semitic for me to read this book, discuss this book written by a famous author, share this material? Am I in danger? Just interesting questions. Who are the Jews, and what are they doing living in the midst of Gentiles? For this knowledge, we again must revert to the biological facts. The Jews are a parasitic people whose members roam the civilized world, seeking any spot where they can settle down in the midst of an established community and where they can remain and prosper at the expense of others. And remember, they do control the Federal Reserve and the banking supplies for countries all over the world. And they apparently, clearly, are sucking out billions and trillions from societies all over the world right now, preparing for some kind of big bad day. So why don't I play another clip? Tim Rifat, somebody who was on Jeff Rentz's show a lot, talks about something called MI-14. And just like the CIA or the FBI, Britain has a intelligence agency named MI-16. But people probably don't know about MI-15 and MI-14. But listen to the clip, and I play these clips so that people can see this isn't just my research. There are many people talking about these things and the people who control our planet and what their intentions are. We can see it around us. The dumping of chemicals in the sky is not about the sun heating up or people producing more CO2. They're destroying our environment. And the artificial intelligence and the computer system, facial recognition systems, and other spying systems, smart meters, smart TVs, smartphones, cameras everywhere. Our own cell phones document what we say, credit card monitoring, debit card monitoring, bank account monitoring. They have everybody. They got the goods on everybody all over the planet. So my advice, watch your back. Watch what you're doing because you're being watched. I'm being watched. And apparently these people do not have good intentions, as we're reading here. But see Tim Rifat, somebody I've always enjoyed listening to. I have his books. He was a remote viewer for the government, leaving his body spying on the enemies. I've got his books. I made videos on them. So here you go.
The research was done on that, and there are only 5% of the population who won't knuckle under to fear management.
It's 5%, that's it? Yeah.
Yeah, we've got 5% that'll knuckle under, and we've got 10% who will cause trouble, but will cave in if you start sanctioning them enough. And the 85% are drones that will just do what they're told. So basically, you've only got 5% of the population in the West that needs to be jailed, tortured, microwaved, poisoned, bankrupted, etc., etc. And the 85% will happily do that for the Rothschild Jew. So as you can see, the system works brilliantly because of the defect of the human race. So if you've got a rapacious kleptocracy like in the West, the people who say, it's going to collapse and it's going to fall on its face are mad because of the nature of humanity. And the 10% who cause trouble and think for themselves will cave in, so you can have them running the secret police and the MI4, which is the largest branch of British intelligence, which runs every aspect of British life, the judiciary, Tavistock, the psychiatric profession. It runs the accountancy, the councils, the media, all run by MI4, which nobody even knows about, which is much, much bigger than MI5 and MI6.
Nobody ever talks about MI4. Oh.
MI4 are the people behind Brexit, managing Brexit for whatever Selina Rothschild, the ruler of Britain, wants. And they're the ones who are popping stuff into the media. They're the ones with the Bank of England financial type stuff. The country's going to collapse. It's going to run out of food, blah, 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 this, that. It's going to be worse than World War II. That all comes from the minds of MI4 and the mass migration, the culture of Britain. Every aspect of Britain has an MI4 department who run it. And that, of course, you can see how bad the British fascist state is when the largest branch of the intelligence service isn't even named or known about by anyone. I only know because I knew people in the intelligence service who give me all the facts, but otherwise you wouldn't even know about MI4. And of course it runs the teaching profession.
I know nothing about it.
No, it runs the teaching profession, the lecturers, and one can see that the safe spaces, the snowflake concept, the trope, as you call it, comes from MI4, who have, and Tavistock, who then, of course, use it to erase freedom of speech, not by making it illegal, but peer pressure.
Oh my, seems like we're in trouble. If they say at the Space Center, Houston, we have a problem. Or in that one movie, we are in clear and present danger. So it says here in this book, page 11 on the bottom, as a parasitic people, the Jews can only survive by living on the work of others. They bring nothing with them, and they exist by appropriating the property of their host. Perhaps the memories of our readers are not too short. Then they remember in 1948, when, so we are told, brave Jewish pioneers went out into the wilderness and founded the state of Israel. And anything could be further from the truth. They were moving pilgrims to Israel for 100 years, buying up properties. And that's why we had World War I and World War II, according to my research. Because they couldn't get the world's leaders to go along with helping to destroy the Arab world and taking over the Palestinians' country. But that's not what they teach. At least that is the way they tell it. But in fact, didn't the Jews invade a peaceful Arab country, and with the aid of millions of dollars worth of arms from Jewish bankers in many countries, seize the towns and the farms and the businesses of the hard-working Arab nation? The very origin of the only Jewish nation in the history of the world identifies this people as a tribe of bandits. Tribe of bandits. So I have another clip here for you. We're closing in on 2 hours. But apparently, Rothschild's Zionists plunging the West and the United States into poverty have already shown where they are literally taking billions and trillions out of the USA Treasury every year. And the way they do it, Congress allocates money to fighting their wars and money to loan them and give them. And the Federal Reserve doesn't give it to our government for free. It gets tacked onto the expense bill that we U.S. citizens have to pay back. Hence, our national debt just goes up and up and up and up. And they will collect. And they bankrupt the United States a couple times, apparently. And even a lot of videos on YouTube are talking about crashing the U.S. system and new money supply to try to erase what they owe to these people. And of course it'll cost we USA citizens a lot. So they'll start over from scratch, assuming we survive, and then they'll just start having the government spend more money, borrowing more money, until we're all completely enslaved in a collapsed system. Those who are alive, FYI, with all the geoengineering and poisoning of the water supply and food supplies. But I can go on, but watch this clip. Rothschild's Zionists plunging the West and the United States into poverty. So what do you believe?
And you see the trade war, which we've got at the moment between America and China, which is ordered by the Rothschilds, is just the preamble to basically getting rid of China as a superpower, because this whole nature of jailing rich people, no matter what their function, be they the ruler of a city or a PLA general, is setting the wrong statement, the wrong meme for the Rothschild kleptocracy. Because remember, white people might look at the Chinese and go, why don't we do that to our bankers instead of bailing them out and giving them infinite money with quantitative easing? Why don't we do that? Sorry? We must be racist because they're all Jewish. Yeah, so we can't say that, can we? But then look at China and look how they have dragged hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, and the Chinese now have a much, much better quality of life because of the Chinese system. Now look at the West. We've got hundreds of millions of people who've been plunged into poverty by the Western governments. So as you can see, the dichotomy is so stark that something has to snap, and one can see the future war between the West and China comes from the dysfunctionality of the West, which is only there to protect the Rothschild oligarchy.
I would suggest we call it satanic greed of the West, the Western controllers. By the way, you mentioned China lifting millions out of poverty. How's this? You already know this, but for our listeners who may not, the poverty rate in China fell from a whopping 88% in poverty in 1981 to only 6.5% in 2012. Think about that for an economic miracle. Yes.
Unbelievable.
There you go.
And we could do that in the West, except the Rothschilds and the Koch brothers and Soros and Buffett and the rest of them have been siphoning off quadrillions of wealth to a few people to buy up everything.
That's
and in the process, the Western economy's collapsed, and hundreds of millions of people have been plunged into poverty.
All right, one more paragraph and one more clip, and I'll end this video. Since the Jews bring nothing with them, how is it that the host nations allow them to remain? Why do they let the Jews appropriate their goods and even their lives? In reality, the Jew does bring something with him. He brings his wits, and he brings his determination to remain in the host country. In spite of all the efforts to dislodge him, using his wits, the Jew pretends to offer something that the host people want or need. The Jew offers trade connections with foreign lands, information about enemies or potential enemies. And he appears as a comedian or a magician offering entertainment, or he appears as an occult being, occult, sorcerer, witchcraft, offering new roads to heaven, guaranteed passports to paradise. If the host people needs money, he offers that, or the promise of money. In any case, if the Jew is allowed to remain, even for a short while, he sinks his tentacles into the host people, and it is soon impossible to dislodge him. Oh my, Eustace Mullins. Go get the book. Maybe you can find it free online PDF or something. If you can find the book. Can you imagine me reading this? And I mean, meanwhile, I'm watching videos every day, all day. Probably because it's still hard for me to believe what I see and what I hear. So the last clip I have here, Tex Mars to Jeff Rent's Israel destroying the Middle East. So this is all planned. It's been planned. And again, these clips I've been playing, pay attention to the titles and go watch the entire clip and see what you think. And again, leave a comment, a thumbs up. I suppose if we are going to save our planet, awaken to the New World Order, and being persecuted, arrested, and probably killed because they want to take away free speech. This was one of the tools on the back of this book. The seeker of paradise lost may seem a fool to one whom has never sought the other world. Jim Morrison. Look at the picture. The handcuffs, free speech. David Icke can't go to Australia, and so much more. And even Israel asking the United States government to pass legislation that people can't talk about these things I'm talking about. People can't collect books like this. People probably can't even watch the videos and the clips I'm showing.
Well, they're no doubt arming. And of course, they get their money, their arms from us, the Israelis do. And they're the ones, listen, when the Arab Spring began, I knew, they said right away, well, God, isn't this wonderful? Egypt is going to be, a great democratic nation again.
No.
I could see what was happening in every country there. And what have we got here? We've got Iraq, Afghanistan, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Lebanon, Yemen, Somalia, of course, in Africa. The Sudan will no doubt be next in Africa.
That's
All
right.
these countries, most of them Muslim, have fallen. But they didn't fall and have another government set up. For example, Libya today is just a wreck. It's nothing. It's potentates fighting potentates. They want to destabilize the entire Middle East. They want to destabilize the United States too. So we have these race riots and everything, cause us to hate each other, destroy each other, and they will then reign on top. This is their whole purpose. Now imagine this 7 million Jews down in Israel. They live amidst over 200 million Arabs, mostly Muslims.
Yeah.
The Muslims were so horrible and so vicious. They could easily destroy that small nation, but they are not. Most of them, in fact, now we know all of these nations have been destroyed themselves. And so we, in country after country, whether it was Hillary Clinton or Obama or George W. Bush, there's been this plot, there's been this conspiracy to destroy these nations. I would like these nations to look again. They're not being destroyed from within. They're not being destroyed by the United States. They're being destroyed by Israel.
All right, on that note, one more paragraph. I was looking at the book and said, oh my, maybe I should say this. When the host people comes to its senses, So the country who is host to these people, and apparently these people have taken over our country, the medical establishment, education, entertainment, banking system, so much more. When the host people come to its senses and realizes that it has allowed a dangerous parasite to enter its being and to threaten its continued health and prosperity, does the host people pause to calmly analyze the problem? Of course not. The host people react biologically. Throughout nature, one can see animals and fish darting around erratically, flinging themselves into the air and making wild gyrations. In many cases, these are hosts who are attempting to dislodge the parasites. So again, with the warnings from the government recently that the electric grid might be down for 6 months or longer, and all these other dire threats and scares about terrorisms and shootings and economic collapse and sustainability, and people like Dane Wigington, Geoengineering Watch, Deborah Treveris, talking about their destroying properties in California and the world with fires and weather control. So we the people all over the world probably would like to dislodge all these evil goings on and whoever the peoples are behind it. So apparently, using a little bit of logic, this would explain why they're installing all these AI systems, artificial intelligence, facial recognition, computerized systems, and having all these military exercising and building underground facilities and prison camps. And it seems like we are in a world war. And the only people who don't know we're in a world war are we citizens. We see all this crazy stuff going on around us and we get confused. We don't know what to do. And when they do turn off the electricity, the citizens, instead of acting like normal, rational people, will probably go crazy in the streets, rioting and killing each other for a bit of water and food. Makes you wonder about the human race. So, Houston, we have a problem. So they say in the Space Center movies. What are we people going to do when we realize we are in clear and present danger and they are trying to destroy us from within and they want us not to believe the only thing that can save us and that this life on planet Earth is just a temporary visit anyways? Where we wind up at the end of the day when we leave the planet is probably more important. Thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle reporting.